Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson. Thank you for joining me today and being part of this program. This is our 179th episode of Solutions with Courtney Anderson, and that is awesome. I'm excited. Today we have an episode that is part of the Courtney, I Am Curious series, and of course this series is where community members like yourself say to me, hey, I'm curious. And they ask me about questions directly related to my individual experience or something that I directly have addressed individually. So that's why we're doing it. You asked, I'm trying to answer. Of course, I always encourage you to stop by CourtneyAnderson.com, and that's where we have our central website, our blog. We also have our companion television show. This obviously is our talk show. That is our radio audio podcast. We all have a video television version of this. And we've got show individual pages for each program. This, of course, being episode 179. You come to the CourtneyAnderson.com site. You can go to the show page. You'll see links to anything that I reference in our discussion, supplemental information. You'll also see opportunities for you to support our show sponsors, and you'll see links and marketing pieces there. So please, if you see something that catches your eye as a good or service from our marketing partners, please go ahead and click on it. And that is part of how we are growing our infrastructure and ensuring that this show and all the other programs and future webinars and materials that we provide, that we can continue to do so. So thank you. I have to ask, if you found our show on iTunes or Stitcher or one of our other distribution channels around the world, please leave a positive or constructive rating or review. So also, my goodness, please share our show on social media. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. Share our show on social media. That's hard. Please do. I anticipate that if there's something that you potentially found thought-provoking or maybe helpful, it might be also of use for other people that you know. So post and share on our social media and on your social media, the show links. Okay, so you've asked me, Courtney, I am curious. In this series, what specifically are we addressing in this individual show episode? Well, we are addressing the following. How did you graduate from college with your bachelor's degree at 20 years old? So again, you've asked, Courtney, I am curious. How did you graduate from college with your bachelor's degree at 20 years old? So just to give a little very brief background, in the U.S. and the States, typically someone finishes their high school education, their first grade through 12th grade, and then they are eligible after that diploma, the high school diploma, to enter into the university. The bachelor's degree, the undergraduate degree, is the first degree to be earned. It requires around average of 120 credit hours. So 120 credit hours. Each class usually is about 3 credit hours on average, and so it's about 40 different courses that need to be completed to earn this undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree. So you can earn a bachelor's degree in arts, bachelor's degree in sciences, and so that's the question. Typically, as someone finishes high school somewhere around 18 years old, and then they enter into the university. And again, this graduation from undergrad, I always heard that it was expected to be a 4-year degree, that you would, would take 4 years. And putting the show together today, I, of course, always mention that data is our friend. Credible data is our best friend. And so I was thinking, well, if somebody starts something when they finish high school, which is somewhere around 18 years old, then, how many, isn't it normal? Isn't it what everybody does to finish their undergraduate degree, their bachelor's degree, and, in 4 years? I was curious. So I went out looking around, trying to find some data, and there's a link on the show page, of course, so CourtneyAnderson.com, episode 179, and there's a link to some Department of Education, so this is the federal government in the United States and their data. was quoted in a Time magazine piece. So I'm reading from that material, and it says, according to the Department of Education, fewer than 40% of students who enter college each year graduate within 4 years, while almost 60% of students graduate in 6 years. So apparently, again, one of the reasons I always say data is our friend is because it helps us better understand the world. I mean, all of us are sort of hobbled to some degree by the fact that we're ourselves. So, we have a tendency to sort of see ourselves as just sort of regular average, and then to make an erroneous assumption that if it's average to us, it's average to everybody else. And so apparently I'm inaccurate, that the data shows that no, everybody, quote unquote, isn't just going out and graduating 4 years. Apparently it's a minority of people. It's fewer than 40% of everybody. So that's all genders and all ethnic backgrounds and all different types of socioeconomic environments. And so, okay, that answered that question. I guess I was off my assumption. In other words, I've gotten this question numerous times. Obviously, it's why we're doing the show, right? But part of me kept thinking, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, I don't understand really why it's that big of a of a question, because in my mind I thought, well, if 99% of people finish in 4 years, if somebody is a little bit more assertive and finishes in 3 years, it's not that big of a difference. Apparently, I have my own skewed version of what I think is sort of average, simply just based on my own experiences, right? Like you and I mean, that's what we do. So this is helping me doing the show to realize I'm off and that I'm inaccurate, that it might be more of an anomaly than I thought. And if you add in, my gender, and if you add in my ethnic background, it's probably even more of an anomaly to finish school in 3 years from the university. So but I don't know. Who thinks about this when they're just, living life? So one of the things I have realized, though, is that my own experience, which I just, sort of considered was, average, it does impact how I interpret a lot of other information. So because to me, I felt like it was sort of, normal and a good idea, right, to finish school as quickly as you could, then it's hard for me sometimes to understand when I'm reading pieces. And we do a whole series, of course, on Educators Eden, where as one of the things I've done and continue to do and love is serving as an educator, right? But sometimes I don't really understand that my experience isn't necessarily representative of kind of the average. And I think, and my problem is that I'll think it is. So I'll think, well, what's the holdup, right? And so let's dive into this. First, I do want to mention this. We have another series where I sort of reflect on some of the things that I have identified in my own understanding of my own life, that I have made decisions that have led to bad outcomes. So we talk all the time about surpassing our goals, and we talk all the time about practicing the joyful art of business. And so I do a lot where I talk about things that worked. Like, I figured things out because I got good outcomes, and then I combine that with additional data to say, well, this is what I might recommend based on good outcomes. But it's imperative that I don't skew the perception and make it seem like I just get all these great outcomes. I have some things that I'm really, thrilled have been, better outcomes than I ever dreamed. I also have lots of things that have happened that have been horrible outcomes. And some of those have just been things that are totally random and beyond my control, or I perceive to be random. So, something really bad happens in life. What could I do, right? There have been other things in life that I know my own decisions resulted in poor outcomes, and I've called that the failure flashback series, right? So we did shows in the failure flashback series where I talked about some of the things that were related to this question. I talked about failing an academic class, right? And I talked about struggling, and I talked about that from my personal experience, the reason that would happen is because I had so many, classes I was taking, and I was, I had a lot on my plate, and I was trying to get stuff done. And to be very fair, I wasn't, sitting around spending huge amounts of time investing in each individual course, because I had sort of a big picture goal I was trying to get done, and I was, moving along as fast as I could. I prioritize speed over sort of introspection and time to absorb every class. Interestingly, like I said, when I started putting this show together, I realized, so if you haven't listened to that and you're listening to this, I assume that might be somewhat interesting to you because it's related. And I talked about a different perspective on, my mission as it was to get stuff done. Like, I just had a goal, and my goal is to graduate. We also have done we've done other programs we talk about, is a degree just a piece of paper? And we've also talked about, we did a show about what do you do if you went to school, you went to college, but you never finished, you never graduated. What can you do with the education you currently have without, having a degree? And I made the argument in those shows that the degree is everything. Without the degree, it doesn't have any meaning. Like, you have to finish, otherwise it's useless. And part of why to me it seems like a weird question, why would you ask that question? Because in my mind, if you start school, the whole purpose is to start school is to finish it. Because I need the high school diploma, I need the undergraduate degree, then I need the law school degree, I need the business school degree, I need the other graduate degree. Like, I have stuff to do, and so there's literally no purpose to starting and not finishing. You don't have anything. It's not worth anything. Now, to be fair, just everything in life is worth something. So just, if I spend a day resting in my, relaxation, watching, cartoons, it was an investment. Maybe it relaxed me. Maybe I had a nice time. So it wasn't wasted in that sense of our lives are never wasted. But my point is that you can use the completion of school to do a whole bunch of things. You cannot use the non-completion of school to really do anything in terms of academic, professional jobs, in anything. So let's talk about what happened and why, to me, I thought it most reasonable thing to do was to get school finished quick because I had other plans. So how did I graduate from college with my bachelor's degree at 20 years old? Well, so I graduated from college from the University of Texas at Austin, right? And I did graduate when I was 20 years old. I did so partially for a couple of reasons. One, they have a opportunity in many parts, not most or all of parts of the U.S. for the public schools, which are the free government schools, that you can take these courses called advanced placement classes. So you take this class, and at the end of this class, then you get a grade like a regular class in high school. But then you also have the chance to take this test, and if you do, whatever the metric is for success on the test, then you can also get college credit. So it's sort of like a 2-for-1, right? So you take this class and you get high school credit, which is fine, whatever. But you also, more importantly, if you score well on this exam, on this advanced placement exam, then you'll also potentially get college credit, which is, in my mind, awesome. And you get the credit even though, remember, you haven't gone to the college yet. You're not even enrolled in college because you're still in high school. You haven't even finished high school yet. But these test results are something that you can go to many institutions, many colleges, universities, and they'll say, okay, you got that score on that AP test, advanced placement, boom, you've finished a class or 2 or whatever, 3 or however many. So here we go. The first thing is I, obviously knew about these and took as many of them as I could. So when I got to college, when I started college in my freshman year of college, so I went ahead, I finished high school, yay. Then I go to college and I went to Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. And so there I am, yay, it's my first time in college. And I went ahead, and at that point they took these AP test results or whatever, or they took it before I actually showed up on campus, but whatever, when I applied. And so it looks like it gave me about 9 credit hours. So it gave me, 3 credit courses. And it looks like I pulled out old, and I do mean old paperwork. Looks like I got credit in English, Lit, and composition, and it looks like I also got credit for U.S. government and politics. And so that took out 9 credit hours before I even finished high school. So that helped, right? Traditionally in the States, in these university systems, again, you have to take these, basically 40 classes. Each one is typically weighted 3 credit hours. And then each of these 3 credit hour courses takes, a term or semester. So and this is from memory now, but if I remember correctly, the average was that somebody would take like 12 credit hours a semester. That would be like, I think, full time. So you take 4 classes. So me coming in with at least 3 classes already from these tests I took in high school, gave me almost a whole semester of class, which is of credit, which is great. The other thing I knew, and maybe you're thinking, how did she know this? How did she know about AP classes? How did she know about any of this stuff? I had a huge advantage in a lot of ways, which I've mentioned maybe in other programs. My family is really into education, and when I say that, I mean really. So, my parents are both college graduates, so they both have multiple college degrees, and then my grandparents, both my grandmothers are college graduates, and they undergrad, and I'm pretty sure I know both of them went to graduate school. I'm not sure if both of them finished graduate school, but neither here nor there. And then my grandmother's parents, that generation, also were college graduates. And on my dad's side, my grandmother's grandfather was a medical doctor, which if you ever met or knew her, then she mentioned it often, and I do mean often. Because when she was a kid growing up, the fact that her grandfather was a doctor was like a really big deal. This was in Oklahoma when she was growing up in the States, and because any today, medical doctors, physicians are esteemed in many parts of the world, looked up to, and often in many parts of the world also they're knowledgeable and they have a lot of authority, and then also there's often power and resources and economic stability resulting from that. On my dad's side, my grandmother, like I said, my grandmother's grandfather was university, college educated, and then her parents were both college educated. In fact, her parents taught at universities in the U.S. and Texas, and the same university her parents taught at, she actually and her sister went to for undergrad. So she knows about college because her grandparents were college degrees, and her parents were college degrees and professors and educators, and then her and her sister, they of course knew all this because they grew up with all this, so they went to the same college their parents taught. So that's a huge advantage, right? Like if your parents teach at colleges, universities, obviously they've had to themselves go to college and university to become qualified to do so, and then they teach there, and they know all this stuff, right? So then my grandmother, so then my dad, of course, obviously knew all this stuff, and of course he was raised in this same family environment where the only question ever is, what college will you go to? Which, believe it or not, and these types of families is a huge question, right? Do you go to a college that maybe is different from the one that your family has gone to? Do you go to a new college? What do you do? And there was another relative on my grandmother's side who had gone to Harvard, which is not gone, but graduated. Which, when I say gone, I mean graduated. Because in my mind, again, college without graduation is, it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, so at Harvard University, one of the top in the world. So the deal is, when you're making these decisions in that setting, you already know all this stuff because you're brought up with all of the knowledge, and the expectation, of course, is, of course you are. It's sort of like asking, are you gonna brush your teeth and take a bath? Well, of course you are. I mean, it's ridiculous if you don't, because what will you do? Your teeth will rot and you'll smell, and you have all these really bad outcomes. So I knew all about all this stuff about, AP and what classes to take. And high school to me was like, there were some really interesting parts of it, but it wasn't anything other than just like a really small stepping stone toward all the other things I had to get done, because that was just, it was like a preliminary. It's like when you go to a restaurant, right? And you're like, oh, well, I have an appetizer. Well, yeah, but I'm still going to have my meal. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not stopping with this. I may even get dessert, right? Like, so high school, I didn't ever see it as anything other than part of this bigger process, right? And so now my mom's side, obviously she also taught at university. She taught at the university that I teach at right now. She taught there in Germany, and then her mother, college educated, and then her mother's parents, college educated, and then her mother's uncle, I put in another show where we did a show about, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I put some information in there about, on my maternal side, my grandmother's uncle, her father's brother, who was college educated and one of the leading lawyers, attorneys in the United States, from the early part of the last century. So he actually fought as a lawyer cases that went to the United States federal court and Supreme Court, and he fought on cases along with one of his friends and professional colleagues, a gentleman named Thurgood Marshall, who's since passed away, but was the first black appointed to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the entire land in the United States. It's incredibly powerful and prestigious job. And so there was links in that show, if you haven't listened to it, and to some of the museum and the Library of Congress research showing my maternal great uncle. But my point simply is this: since that's like my grandmother's uncle, then who had done all these wonderful things as a lawyer, then by the time I come along, obviously, and end up going to law school, it's nothing. I mean, it's nice, but it's sort of like, yeah, but generations ago, people already went to law school when it was much more difficult. There were very few, black lawyers at all in the whole country, much less ones that went to court and changed the laws that opened up access to education and housing and everything. And so if that's, an ancestor, it's not anything interesting really at all that somebody else down the line in terms of being a descendant says they're going to go to school, because this has already been done. And at the highest level, right? Let's literally put the links in there, to the museums and records of the cases that change the entire society. So me moving along in life, yeah, of course I knew all this stuff about AP classes and what kind of high school activities or whatever I needed to engage in to move on to the next step, which was the appetizer sort of education, which was getting the undergrad degree. So I also didn't see the undergrad degree as anything potentially terminal, right? So you don't stop at the appetizer. I also wasn't going to stop with sort of this appetizer deluxe, which is your undergrad degree, because that is a requirement. Like high school is a requirement to go and even apply to the universities. And then the undergrad degree is just your next bare minimum requirement to go start to your graduate education. And most people, both my parents both have both have college, both have graduate degrees. And so of course many of their ancestors, right? And so again, that was expected. It was just sort of the norm. It was average. And so by the time I got to, college, university, starting this bachelor's degree program, again, I didn't see it as anything other than sort of like, something you do along the way, but it wasn't at all meant to be some sort of, terminal activity that was going to, because I knew from my own experience, and I know from my family, and then I knew from, again, dad is your friend, what kind of professions and jobs and businesses and things will be available to me, with a high school education or with a bachelor's degree. I mean, there'd be more than if without that, but I never even considered without that, because it wasn't anything that seemed even real, because it's sort of like everyone does these things. And within this sort of small circle of, all these ancestors and everything, then it was what everybody does. So all that's to say that I didn't, as I said at the beginning, I didn't think this was really anything different. And I also didn't fully understand that perception of having 4 and 5 generations of college graduates in your family on both sides is an anomaly. I didn't get that. Like I again just sort of saw, I thought it was, I thought it was sort of average. And so I understand that I saw that some of these ancestors did all these really great things, right? Like, graduate from Harvard and, taking cases to the, Supreme Court or whatever. I saw that was like super awesome and an incredible accomplishment. But I didn't think that just sort of run of the mill finishing school in, whatever few years was unusual. And I'm trying to explain that part of that is because of all of this environmental input that to me kind of skewed my version. So by the time I get to college, university, I went ahead and had my plan. I always looked at school like this. You get the degree plan, which is what it sounds like. It's a little piece of paper. Now it's, digital. And it'll tell you, what do you have to do to graduate? It'll tell you exactly what it is. You have to have so many classes. You have to have this many classes in your, in a major. You have to have this many classes in a minor. You have to earn this sort of grade. You have to, whatever. Have so many different, classes that are what they call electives, which are not in your major or minor. You have to have whatever, a comprehensive exam or whatever, other requirements there might be. Maybe there's a thesis or whatever. They write it all down for you. And you get that like at the beginning. Sort of like a menu when you go to the restaurant. I'm back to these analogies, right, about appetizers and whatever. But it's sort of like a menu. And then to me, it's sort of a menu, but it's more of a map. But it's kind of both because you do have some choices. Like it'll tell you what you have to take. And then in most instances, especially at undergrad, because there's 120 credit hours. So most of those are chunks of 3 credit classes, but some of them are 1 credit classes or 4 credit classes or with a lab. Especially a lot of your sciences and languages, you'll have a laboratory component that's an extra couple of hours, maybe total with 6 credit. So, it's a variety. And then you have a mandatory amount of stuff you have to take in the States for many of these degrees. Then you also get some choice. Like there's some extra stuff that you have to take it from these options, but you get to pick the individually specific class, right? An elective. So that's the menu part. And then the map part, of course, is telling you, what's the goal? Where are we going? We talk about all the time in these programs, surpassing our goals. Well, the goal is that I'm going to get my degree. To me, there's no other purpose to even have started this. And again, in my worldview and my experience, it wouldn't even be an option. Unless, of course, something horrible, happened and I became, physically injured or, I was in a coma or something, then obviously, no, of course I can't. But absent that, of course I'm going to get this done. It's sort of in my mind was sort of bare minimum. I have to get this done because I need to be able to decide. When I first started school, I thought I'd be a medical doctor, sort of like the, ancestor. And then when I got moving along, I changed and I said, okay, well now I'll go and I'll do the law school. I'll be a lawyer because again, more ancestors and examples. And then I have other, aunts and other cousins who are lawyers and judges and all this kind of stuff too. So I have all these examples to pick from. But anyway, to make a long story short, I look at the degree plan and then I interpret that as my menu/map. And then I take it and I plan out on my own. This is really a crucial part of this. I take responsibility because obviously I'm here for me. It's my degree. And I plan out myself. I look at my own little calendar and I look at all my own little dreams and plans and I look at all my little goals and all of this. And then I decide when I'm going to graduate and how quick it's going to happen or slowly or whatever and what I'm going to take. And I write it all down. I still get excited when I start something. I finished my last degree just not even a year ago, right? So there's been a huge gap in time between, this very first degree all these years ago and then all these other degrees in the interim. But I still get excited when I get my degree plan because I sit down, I do the exact same thing now that I did as a teenager, right? When I was finishing high school and starting my university, I just pull the thing out and I look at it and I see all the requirements and I get my calendar and, I think about all the other things in my life and then I plan out exactly what I'm going to take and when I'm going to take it as per the rules. I mean, every one of these places has all these requirements, right? Like, there's a maximum number of classes you can take per term. And if you want more than that, you have to petition and ask us. And there's a minimum amount you have to take and all this, they have all these rules, but whatever. Sometimes your class is predicated on you taking a prior course as a prerequisite, whatever, fine. So I look at all the rules and then I plan on my calendar what I'm going to do and then I'm happy and about my way and then I go do that. And then I adjust, of course, as life happens. Sometimes something happens and oh my goodness, I'm going to have to stop school for a little bit. This is with my more recent degrees, but when I was in this first degree that took 3 years, I did the same process I do today, which is take the degree plan and understand that that's the requirement. Now, my mind is that I'm the one that's in charge of how many get there. I understand that they have all the rules and they always have all these rules, right? Not just, how many classes and all the, how many dates you have to register and all the different, they have these schools. And this is someone, I am a happy educator, but they're the sort of the labyrinth of logistics and minutia of rule upon rule upon rule. I understand why they're there and it's fine, but I think that they're sometimes can be perceived by a student as overwhelming. I don't view them as overwhelming. I just view them as, okay, let me just sit there and digest them all and then make my plan and then keep looking back from my individual plan to see what I'm, having a conflict with or what I'm going to have to go ask for some sort of exception from the advisor or the school or whatever, because I have to stick to my own goals. And from the beginning through the middle of, completing these education things through to the end, in my mind, it's my thing. It's my life. If I don't want to be here, I wouldn't be here. I want to be here because I want to get this degree. So I'm going to get it. And then I make my own little plan, looking at my own little calendar, and then I get started. Here's where it gets challenging. Now, as I said, I understand why the schools have all these rules because there's layers of rules, and there's extra rules depending on other extra things. So there's just rules promulgated by whatever entity is the one that says, yes, you qualify as university and you're, have the ability to confer this degree. And then each individual, degree program and major and school will have different additional degrees. And then if you're someone who has to borrow money, in the States, this is a huge thing because these schools charge money. So if you have to borrow, if your family doesn't have the money or no one's just going to pay it, or you didn't receive some other scholarship, or somebody else is funding it, or you have to fund it because it's not free. So depending on the funding sources, and there's a whole bunch of other rules, right? If there's a grant that you've received, there's a scholarship that you've received. If there's a loan, there's other rules about everything from applying to the deadlines to the registration to what you can and can't take to if you need to withdraw from a class and all of this. I understand why it exists. I'm saying it has to. I think sometimes maybe we could improve the facilitation of explaining to students what the rule is and have more clarity on the purpose of the rule. The purpose of the rule, ideally, of course, is to ensure that the institution has high caliber education and is ensuring that their graduates are actually able to do the stuff that the degree says they can, right? That they have learned things. That is important. So when I'm researching for this program and I'm thinking, maybe I'm a little bit of an anomaly. So of course I'm always out looking. Data's our friend. And I found a article, and so the link is on the show page, right? And it's somebody else who I don't know this person. Somebody else went out and it was in this article talking about how they finished college and degree in 3 years. It's Confessions of a 3-year degree, right? So I found this and I'm like, see, not just me. Obviously, it's not just me. Obviously, I understand that. What I'm saying, though, is that some of these ideas aren't just mine either. Listen to this. Total stranger, don't know the person. All right, so I'm reading the quotes, and the link again is on the show page. And this is from an article that says Confessions of a 3-year degree, right? Okay, so this person is writing about how they, in their past, in their undergrad degree, finished in 3 years. So let's read, and here's some of the quotes I've included on the show page. Okay, so just as I explained at the beginning, the person writes about how they had their plan, that they were going to, work it all out, and they were going to finish school really quickly, right? Relatively speaking. Now, see, it's all relative, but okay. They were going to finish school in 3 years. They did the same thing I just said that I did and still continue to do. Now I'm reading from the quote. Proud of my plan, I took it to my freshman advisor, a crusty history professor, who scoffed at me. It won't work, he said. Trust me, you just need to relax and enjoy your classes. Don't be in such a hurry. You'll never have this opportunity again. Undeterred, I stuck to my guns. When I switched to a new advisor in my major, I can still remember arguing with him about whether my plan would work. On several occasions, I pulled out that sheet of notebook paper and showed him that it would, but he would just roll his eyes. I probably was a little on the snarky side, being a mere teenager and all, so I'm sure I drove him crazy, but in the end, he signed my registration and let me take my courses. Institutions should have to improve academic advising. As much as I loved my undergraduate experiences, my advisors were more likely to have held me back from advancing rather than facilitating my plan. Okay, that's the end of the quote that I'm reading from. That is exactly my point. Now, obviously, I had an experience. I go looking for different data, and I find things that resonate with me. So, of course, I want to share that. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most accurate or credible, but it's certainly under the time constraints of preparing for this program. And that's the bias we all have, right? I'm going to go look for stuff to sort of support or reaffirm sort of my pre-existing hypothesis. But we're going to run with this for right now and interpret this as, let's say, it's potentially credible. It's exactly what happened to me. I really think, and if you're part of our community, listen to this, and you're starting or in your degree, your undergrad degree, and you want to get it done, get it done. It's your program and it's your life. And the thing is that myself and this other person who I don't know at all, who had the exact same situation that I had, where these advisors were, that's what I was saying. Like, so I made my plan, and then I would have to go, and because my plan would require me to take, extra classes or whatever, I had the exact same thing where people, would sit me down and sort of talk to me like I was an idiot and tell me how this didn't make any sense. And that whole idea, right? There's no hurry. What's the hurry? And at the time, of course, I'm thinking there is a hurry. It's called life. This is not the destination. This is like a stop on the way. I have a ton of other stuff I have to do, right? Because I initially I'm still wrestling with, it's either going to be medical school or law school at least. And at one point I also thought I was going to do medical and law school. It sounds maybe weird, but it's not unusual. I had a professor actually in law school who was a neurosurgeon and a lawyer, and I thought it was one of my favorite classes, and actually that's what I wanted to do for a while. Anyway, that's irrelevant specifically what I was thinking of, but the point is that I had to get through with this sort of preliminary thing just to get on to the next part. I had stuff to do. So for somebody to tell me not to hurry, I don't understand where they thought, what did they think I had? Just forever to sit around here at this part that's not even anywhere near the end of my journey? I have a lot of stuff I got to get done between here and there. I need to finish this just to be able to apply, or get close to finishing this to be able to apply to the next part. And I don't even know how many of the next parts, I'll need, but I'm going to need at least a couple of my other degrees, my graduate degrees. Like, what on earth? I agree it's not a hurry. I'm not saying that you should, hurt yourself. But I did encounter the exact same thing that this totally, I don't know, person I don't know experienced, where there's so much pushback. And again, when we talked about anomalies, and from the very beginning I said that we're all skewed sort of with our own idea of what we think is average, that afflicts me and you and the advisors in school. So if everybody's sort of used to that's what the average is, and you're not, conforming to that, then there's going to be, pushback. Now there's a lot of data. When I was looking for information, there's so much information, right, about what can we do to get students, to get to finish in 6 years? What can we do to get them to finish? And then what are they talking about 6 years? They're talking about from the time a first-time student. So the idea, the traditional student who finished high school as a teenager, somewhere around, 17, 18, 19, however old they were when they finished high school, and then going into university after, maybe a summer off. And then whenever they first start school for that bachelor's degree as a first-time university student, how many years does it take from that time to them actually graduating with their undergraduate degree? That's what they're talking about. So they're talking about, 6 years from the time you start, or 4 years from the time you start. I and the author of the other piece, we're talking about 3 years from the time you start. And honestly, to be truly fair, my original plan was to finish in 2.5 years. I had it all set out. I got a little, I called lazy, and got a little distracted and off focus, and it ended up taking me these 3 years, which actually at the time angered me because I felt like I'm, letting myself down, and I'm slowing down, and I was disappointed in myself. But I just said, well, life happens, right? You got distracted, or you got a little bit lazy or whatever. But my point simply is this. There's a lot of dialogue and a ton of resources, again, focusing on this, like, how do we get people to just get through in 6 years or 4 years or whatever. There is not a lot of information that I readily have found available about people who want to finish in, the 2.5 or 3 years or 3.5 years or whatever. That's not, I don't find a lot about the people who are finishing in less than 4, even just that category. My point being that here's the thing, it's not relevant whether it's 3 years or honestly 30 years from when you start to when you finish. It's your life. So if it's working for you and is your plan, then do it. My point though is that anytime that we're out in life and we're trying to surpass our goals, which is one of the things I talk about all the time in all of our programs, right? I'm trying to get stuff done. When you're dealing with other people, as you have to in life, that don't see things like you do, they will often, and it's inadvertent. I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make any sense when there's all this dialogue and there's all this emphasis and there's all these resources thrown at what can we do to get people to graduate college faster. Part of it is because if the people don't have, independent wealth and they're having to, borrow money especially, then the longer they're in school, the more it costs. And they're running up debt. So that's a lot of this. The other thing is the longer it takes you, somebody might get discouraged and just quit. And then we know when you drop out and you don't finish it, then all that time you've already invested in it, you don't have the credential or the degree, and so you can't use it. So we don't want that. That's like a worst case scenario for anybody, I would think. And I know you're going to say, well, what about people we read about, and they dropped out of college and they're really successful, they started a tech company or whatever. Yeah, there's always an anomaly, okay? But what I'm saying is, for most of us, if you start it, finish it. And you'll be surprised. There's a lot of stories out there where there's somebody who was in school and then maybe they were professional. They became a professional athlete or something exciting and awesome happened. But they'll go back often later in school and they'll pick up the rest of it just to finish. Why not? It's just a sort of, it's sort of dangling out there. There are other people who, because something super awesome happened, they started their business, whatever, then they got so caught up in all that other stuff and all that other success that, of course, it didn't mean anything. But they often will say that they did take the knowledge for however little time they were in school, and it is part of what resulted in some way in the opportunities they have, either in their business or in sports or whatever. So in the arts, we'll see this all the time. So it's still important. It diminishes depending on the sort of magnitude of the other things that you're accomplishing in life. And my argument simply to you is, why not? If you can, go ahead and finish. If you finish now, great. If you've come back later and finish, fine. But if you haven't finished and it's an obstacle, and that's where we're really talking about usually. So if you started, you started college, but then you built your big business and, you became a billionaire, then you're not worried about student loan payments. Then you're not worried about getting a job. You own your own business, and it's one of the, biggest, most successful in the world. So it's not an obstacle. So the people that usually we're having these dialogues and there's all this content about that are having all these challenges, they're an obstacle that they haven't finished because they have debt for something they don't even. It's like going out and you're paying for student loans and you never even got the product. You don't even have it. That's like the worst possible thing I can imagine. I'm paying for something I don't even have, and that's awful. And the other thing is that you hear these obstacles are because people are saying, I don't have a really, quote, good job, or I can't get the income I want. So if they had their own business or they're a professional athlete or a famous actress, and they're a millionaire or whatever, then they're not talking about they can't get a job because they already have all this other stuff. Then, yeah, it makes sense. But if you're not in that situation, which I'm not a famous professional athlete or actress, I haven't started some incredibly successful business and I'm a billionaire. I have my own way of happiness in my own little corner of the world. I've been proud to have, been an entrepreneur in my own small way. But I've only been able to do what I do in my business because I use all the stuff that I earned in school. I use that in my business. So again, when you give me these examples, well, so-and-so, they never finished. Well, yeah, but that's the reason you gave me that name is because you know who they are, because they're famous, they're accomplished, they're incredibly wealthy. They're not worried about a student loan payment, and they're not up there whining about why can't they get a job, because they don't need any of that. So that is one group. If you're in that group, then who cares if you ever finish? Some people do, like I said, go back because it just bugs them. Like they feel like, I don't want to leave it out there. And sometimes it'll be decades later. Sometimes people say, well, it was important to my family, or it was important to me, or just, sort of hanging out there, and I felt like, let's just finish. So, but it's not an obstacle to them. So when they say they didn't finish, then it's not something that's hurting them because they're using the skills, the business skills, the athletic skills, the acting skills or whatever it is and often those were something they also used in school, right? So they're still benefiting from it and they don't have any obstacles. They're not worried about why they can't get a job. They're asking about how to pay their student loans. So we fixed the answer to that. It's the other larger population who is saying it's an obstacle. Nobody would ever ask me about how I can use the degree time in a program I spent without earning a degree unless they meant they were trying to leverage it. If it's an obstacle, not finishing school, then finish school. If it isn't an obstacle, then you wouldn't be asking the question anyway because it wouldn't matter to you. But the people, when we talk about these graduation rates, they're not talking about the person who went out and started their business, or went out and became a famous athlete or entertainer or sculptor or author or filmmaker or whatever. They're talking about the people who are having obstacles and financially it's hurting them. And they're saying, look, I can't pay these payments or I can't get a, quote, good job because all I have is a high school diploma that I've earned. And that's why they're talking, the government, all these media articles talking about graduation rates, education groups, because the people are in that larger population who are having obstacles because they haven't finished school. And the longer it takes you to finish, then obviously if you're borrowing money, then the more money you're going to have to borrow. So the faster we can get somebody to like the end of this one task, which is, yay, walk across the stage if you want or not, but here's your diploma, here's your degree, yay, you're done. Now you have it and you've earned it and you'll keep it forever and you can use it in anything that you do and there it is. And so that's what they're trying to do is to have all this discussion. Like I said, I didn't find a lot of research or discussion about people who finish in the other side of the anomaly. The people who take, who are done, lickety split in, 2 years or 3 years or whatever. There's not a lot of discussion about that, obviously, because it's a small number. right? But the small number doesn't mean it doesn't have really important information to share with the larger groups. And part of what I'm saying is that my personal experience was I, like this other author I read the quotes from, went and made my own little plan. That's the only way this would happen, right? Because when you go to these advisors and depending on the size of the school, I went to large schools. So the schools I went to today, and this is decades later, and I've taught too at the same school that I finished undergrad from. These are large schools. By large, what do I mean? I mean, I'm talking a total campus enrollment, and this is all programs, around 50,000 students. 50,000 students. I mean, it's larger than most towns and cities in the world, right? 50,000 students at the school. That's all undergrad and grad, but these are large populations. So, when there are 50,000 students, then it's not like the individual advisor or counselor, whoever I was talking to in the registrar's office, like they knew me. There's too many people. Now, I intentionally like big schools, and I've talked about that in other speeches, and I think there's a lot. For that personality type like myself, it was exactly where I needed to be. Because it allowed me a lot of autonomy. And when I talked about electives and, when I said you could order what you want off that menu of your degree plan, I wanted all of that. I want to have the entire breadth and depth of all of it. I want to be in the anthropology class, which I loved. I want to be in astronomy, teach me about, something advanced in physics I didn't learn before that I loved. I took all that stuff. I wanted to be in a big school where there was all of that, and I loved it, and it worked out. I picked it on purpose. It wasn't an accident. So when you're in those types of situations, and even in a smaller school, you have to really speak up assertively and tell people, look, this is my plan and I'm sticking to it, because there's going to be pushback. And it wasn't personal to me, because this other author shared the same exact thing that happened to me, and I don't even know who the people were. And so it's not personal. What it is somebody saying, look, you're coming in here as a kid, right? Which makes sense, because you start at whatever, 17, 18, 19, and then you're finishing in 3 years. You're going to be done by whatever, 20, 21, you're a kid. And so some advisor is telling you, or some professor is telling you, this is goofy. You don't have to rush, and they're rolling their eyes and they're telling you that this isn't going to work. Just because they haven't seen it, or it doesn't happen often, that doesn't mean it won't work. It just means it's not what they've experienced. Now, the author of the article, who's what a surprise, an educator, and myself, of course it'll work. Why wouldn't it work? It's just like, it's a map. You told me what I needed to do, and as long as I use all of the rules and I'll check every one of these counter conflicts of the timing and how many credits and the prerequisites and all this kind of stuff, as long as I meet all of your rules, of course it'll work. It's not magic. It's just a plan. It's math. So but you have to get approved. People have to sign off. The reason that the person who wrote the quotes I read from and that I mentioned this is because that these traditional institutions, obviously they have to approve. They have to sign off on this stuff and allow you to register for however many classes or whatever. And that's there for a reason. I think a really important reason, because ideally what we're trying to do is make sure that people understand that if you didn't have that, then people would just go take random classes that didn't give them any degree. And they'd come and say, well, look, I took, 500 classes. And people would say, well, yeah, but none of them met any of the requirements for the degree programs that exist. So you do have to have checks and balances. And I think it's really, really important. Not everybody's as knowledgeable before they get to school about what higher ed, because maybe they're the first in their family to go to college. So when I gave that long story narrative, but the purpose of it was to really explain why I sort of know all this stuff, because I grew up with it. So it's like if you ask somebody whose parents, speak French, well, how do you speak French so well? They're going to tell you, well, I grew up with it. I learned it every day. I spoke French. They speak French. That's how come I speak French so well. It's a lot of it, right? It gives you an advantage because you have exposure to all this knowledge and information. Where if there's somebody like myself, I didn't take a French class and speak French, so I was, a teenager in middle school or high school or something. So I came at it with a huge disadvantage from somebody who was a native speaker, and their parents and their grandparents and 4 and 5 generations of people sitting around speaking French all the time. Of course, they have more knowledge and fluency than I do. It's just life. So if someone comes to a university and they don't have anybody that sat down and explained any of this to them, the only people that are going to potentially help them are going to be advisors, because they don't even know. They don't even get it. And if you're the first person to go to school, and your family and friends and everything, there's nobody else to have talk to you about credit hours, and talk to you about, the goals, and talk to you about whatever grad school plans you may have. You don't have any of that. So you're totally out there on your own. And then if somebody gives you pushback, like an advisor or counselor, and says to you, hey, this is a stupid plan. It's too many classes. It's not going to work. And they're rolling your eyes. You're more likely to say to yourself, oh, well, they know what they're talking about, and I don't. I'm the first person here that I've ever known. I don't know what I'm doing. I made up my own little plan in my own little, room by myself, and I was going to finish, whatever in 3 years. And then I came and told these people, and they told me that it was a stupid plan and rolled their eyes at me. And I'm going to be more likely to defer to them if I don't have any other tangible or even intangible, but some sort of touchstone that I can turn to and say, but it will work. And if you don't have that and somebody's telling you no, then you're more likely to say, oh, okay, well, I guess I won't try. And advisors and counselors and registrar officials and academic advisors and all that stuff, they're doing incredibly important work. And what they're trying to do, again, is make sure that somebody's not just sort of out there randomly taking whatever, and then they don't have anything that's going to add up to meet the requirements for actual graduation. So they're doing really important work. And they're doing the best that they can based on their knowledge. All I'm arguing, and the point in the other article like read from, was saying maybe we could educate and say, let's expand our perception and do two things. Educate students and say to them, hey, look, the degree plan is set in stone, right? Because it is. Those are the rules. Your way of how you're going to accomplish this is up to you to some degree. So maybe both sides could be educated. Educate students and say, take a little bit more responsibility on your own. Now, you know what you have to do because it tells you. Now, look at your own life and look at your own experience and ask yourself, okay, what do you want? And how many classes you're going to take. Now, there are going to be a whole bunch of rules that are going to kick in. Again, if you're borrowing money, and even if you're receiving money, like a grant or a scholarship, there's going to be rules about there's a lot of rules about minimum classes because they're trying to stop somebody from saying, yeah, I'm going to get my college degree, knowing you have to get 120 credit hours, again, from the state bachelor degree, undergrad degree. And if you let somebody sort of enroll and take 1 credit hour, it's going to take take 120 semesters. I mean, that's not even really helpful. And so it's trying to take someone and again move them toward degree completion is what's really focused on, and so much of that energy is trying to get people to take the bare minimum, and then people have all the other pressures, right? I have to work, I have my I'm a parent, I have all these kids, I'm a volunteer, I'm a friend, I have social activities, and all the things that quote get in the way. So none of this is easy. The logistics of it are necessary, in my personal opinion, to ensure that we do have quality education and that we don't just sort of say to people, you want a piece of paper that says you have a degree, you can make that on your own printer. Everybody can go do that. Now, was it worth anything in terms of knowledge or critical thinking or your abilities? No, I would say no. But so that's what we're trying to avoid. And the legacy systems that some of these come out of, why is it 120 credit hours? Why does it have to be this many credit hours a semester? All this kind of stuff. Well, there's reasons in a history that you can read. All that's being debated, I think, in most parts of the world in higher ed, of what can we do to make this adapt to, the current technology and job skills that are necessary. So there's a lot of dialogue about that. But the rules that you enter a degree plan under are the rules, and so you need to sit down. And again, I'm arguing educate both sides. You want to finish in 3 years, fine. Sit down, look at what they require, look at your time, and ask yourself, what are you going to have to cut back? Because something's got to give. There's only 24 hours in a day. So I say, start early. Before you even think about anything else, you should be getting college credit in your high school, assuming you're somewhere in the world that has a similar type program. That's, you take a free high school class, you do well on that test, boom, college credit, done. To me, that's easy. The other thing that I did is go to community colleges. Community colleges are set up for 2-year degrees, or set up for sort of a half of a bachelor's degree. So somewhere around 60 credit hours is what they call an associate's degree in the U.S., sort of a halfway between. And some licenses and some practical fields, 60 hours in an associate's degree is sufficient to get you the license as, whatever that job. But community college is another thing I went and did. I went in summer school and I stacked up as many, classes as I could and added that to what I took in my long-term semesters. And then I had my extra credits from high school, the AP classes, and then boom, I'm done. I'm 20, yay, I finished. And then I went and started law school literally like in the next few weeks, because law school, I went to the same school, University of Texas at Austin School of Law, and so it was right there in the same place. So I just, that's a whole nother story, starting law school at 20. But the point is, I was happy in some ways, because even though I didn't meet my 2.5-year goal, because I got a little bit lazy and off track, I still was happy because I had stuff to do. And then, of course, I got to law school, and I was, I believe, the youngest, or maybe there was one other person who also was under the 21 years old. In the U.S. at the time is the legal age, and it still is today. Most places in the U.S., the legal age to be able to have alcohol. And so it was like a big thing by the time I got to law school, because to be under that legal age was very rare, because a lot of people wanted to go have social time, which made, total reasonable sense at a pub or, bar or whatever. And so that was sort of a, it was a way to feel, I felt kind of, excluded in some ways, but I'm the one that made this happen, right? Like, I did this. And what I'm saying is simply this. The question, how did I graduate? Well, I just added up all the hours I needed, and I took all the time I said, and that was necessary. And I thought, what am I going to do to get there as quickly as possible? The classes in high school, the AP classes, were a no-brainer to me. If you're somewhere where those are available, take them. What are you doing? I mean, you don't have to have a class. It's already going to give you high school credit. When I went and took them, I remember correctly, it's not going to cost, it's not like some extra thing where it's like, $1 million to take an AP class. I mean, it's set up to give you an advantage, so take it. I do want to say, when I, data is our friend. When I was looking at this class, this show, I thought, well, I wonder, was it an anomaly for me to take those AP classes at the time? So I went back and I found some data that really surprised me, but it's right around the time. So it's not the exact year that I took my AP, but in my AP classes, but it's pretty close. But it says in 1990, blacks, that's me, Black American. It didn't say Black American, just said black, so it could be any national origin. But anyway, in 1990, blacks made up 2% of all students in the advanced placement program. Now, I had no clue of that until literally today when I'm recording the show and found that data, and I thought, wow, really? Odd. So it may be that when I went to an advisor or a counselor in person, obviously this is before the internet, and I'm telling them, like, hey, I made up my own little plan to get to your 120 credit hours, and I need you to sign off on it. And people were kind of telling me the same thing they told this other author, like, what are you doing? It's not going to work. It may be that because only of all the people that took AP tests around that time frame, only 2% of them look like me. It may be that they didn't think or even consider that I had these hours and that I had my plan. So it may be that they were making decisions based on what they expected, which the data supported, but they didn't necessarily think broader than that. And when I talked about educating both sides, what I meant is universities have, I believe, one of the most important functions in society. Education is something that I believe in deeply. I have a quote I use in our Educators Eden series from Nelson Mandela, right? Education is the most powerful weapon. I believe this. I really do. Not necessarily formal degrees, but I believe education. And if you're going to get education, and there's a chance for you to also at the same time while you're learning stuff to have this formal credential conferred, why not? Because you can use a credential to go out and then there'll be less competition for these jobs that often in professions and opportunities that will pay more money, supply and demand. Why not go ahead and get the degree? You're already getting the knowledge. And so I'm saying educate the schools to help better understand that people are individuals. And we don't want to be an obstacle to people being creative and being in charge of their own lives, right? On the other hand, we have to educate students. If you just sit around passively and, that's what my counselor told me. Well, yeah, maybe your counselor was having a bad day. Maybe your counselor was confused. Maybe your counselor had a stomach ache. Maybe your counselor's a genius. But I don't care what the situation is. Why are you so totally reliant on just what one other person or somebody else tells you? What I'm saying is this is a collaboration, and most importantly, it's your life. So you should go in to talk to the counselor with a very clear understanding of what it is that you want and why. You need to be able to explain it. Now, you may be able to explain it, show how it'll work, as the quote I read from, or the person said, hey, look, I showed them a piece of paper. I wrote it all down. And they still were like, you're an idiot. It's not going to work. That may happen, but at least you're able to defend your position, to support it and defend it. If you just go in there, what should I take and why should I take it? And then you just hand over your life to somebody else, they're going to do their best. I don't care if you went to a school that had 20 people or it had, 200,000 people. They're all trying their best. This is a very, important job. And I've not met personally an advisor or counselor who wasn't doing what they thought was their best. So they are trying. But you know what would really help? If you would also come in there, it's your life, and be ready. This is extremely important. So have a plan. If you can support and defend your plan and you think to yourself, look, my plan worked. I know I can do this. I just need their approval, even if they might be like, oh, you're goofy and this is stupid and you're rushing or whatever, but they'll still approve it because it does meet the rules. Then try. Now, if you are unable to do it, what did you lose? Nothing. You're already ahead of the game. You and I are responsible, I believe, for us. And I think that even if you went to the finest, greatest, most awesome school in the history of the universe, you're still going to have this situation where the school is representing multiple interests and you represent you. You are your advocate. You have got to take that time and invest. And if you're the first in your family or the first to go to this school, you really need to step up and investigate. And I don't mean ask a friend and you definitely need to take our programs and be focusing on your confidence and your assertiveness, because there will be people told me directly to my face things. I don't remember the exact words all these years, but directly, I think a lot of it influenced by, the way I look, right? So their perception of my age and ethnicity and, gender and all this kind of stuff. And people would talk to me like I was really, really an idiot. I may be a huge idiot, but I did have my plan and my plan did work. And it was just math. I mean, all I had to do, and I'm not, was just figure out how many credits are left, how many do I need, how many semesters are there, and then just take them, and of course pass them with the good grades, whatever I needed to keep it moving. That's all I had to do. I will figure this out. There's some of all the things I've done that are in the failure flashback series, and all the things that I struggle with, and all the things that I just am so disappointed in myself and all this kind of stuff. I do not at all think that I have failed to be an advocate for myself. I feel that I've taken that responsibility very seriously, and I've been consistent. So if they roll their eyes or they tell you can't be done, and it can, and they went ahead and signed off on it, and you do it. And remember, a lot of the times people tell you it can't be done is not that it can't be done, because if it couldn't, they wouldn't approve it. What they meant is they haven't seen it done themselves, or they haven't seen it done in a long time, or they haven't seen it done by somebody who looks like you or who sounds like you or whatever. And that's why they're saying this, but that's their own opinion. First of all, you're in the school. That's why you're talking to the registrar. So that meant that you already met all whatever those qualifications were. And you're intelligent. This is your life. You must take responsibility for yourself. I hear a lot of people complain. When I was a student, I heard a lot of my friends, people told me to register for this and they were wrong and now it's all messed up. Look, here's the deal. Like I said, I don't care if you go to the best place in the world or the universe or whatever, that there may be misunderstandings, maybe having a bad day, whatever. You sometimes are going to get not awesome advice, or it may actually be inaccurate. That doesn't happen often, but it does. Just like when you go to a medical doctor, physician, there's all that whole idea, get a second opinion. Yeah. Not that you're saying that your doctor is wrong. Sometimes, though, they misinterpreted, or they didn't fully see something, or maybe they were having a bad day, and so they didn't, understand something like they should. Maybe they were accurate. When you go to the second opinion, third opinion, 15th opinion, you're going to get the exact same information. But you don't know unless you take responsibility for yourself. The whole point is to get the second opinion. We don't know what it'll be. But we're going to be advocates for ourselves, and we're going to go out there and seek it out. If you sit around and you say, well, that's what the doctor said, and then you go and, the doctor said that, but they were wrong. And now they operate on me and it totally was unnecessary, and now I've suffered all this harm. I'm not saying you didn't deserve it. What I am saying, though, is get a second opinion. And it's the same thing with the stuff with school. You may not have a second opinion you can get. There may not be another advisor to go to, but your opinion is the first one. Their opinion is the second one. Do you see what I'm saying? If it can be done, keep going back to the rule book. All of the institutions have very elaborate rule books and policy and procedure manuals and all this kind of stuff. And they have built in a way for you to appeal stuff. So, if they told you no and you're convinced that you think your first opinion was right and your second opinion was wrong, then appeal it. There's almost always a process to appeal it. You may find out that you were totally wrong. It may be when you look at it and the people finally come back to you like, look, you totally misunderstood what this policy was. It says this, and you were wasted all this time and you were embarrassed. But you know what? That has happened to me. That's okay. It's a learning experience, and it's not a game of who's right and wrong. It's your life, and the goal is to complete the degree and get on to whatever the rest of your life is. And so you're not infallible. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have misunderstandings. But if you work it out in your mind and you continue with good research and good explanations, and somebody's telling you, no, just because they think you can't do it, well, then that's their opinion. If someone's telling you no because it's impossible and you misunderstood the policy, and now that you look at it again, you realize, then that's the rule. Then just go back to the drawing board and come with a new attack plan. But you got to take responsibility. It cannot be this passive thing where, I went to the office and that's what they told me. Now look at this. No, they may have told you or may not. I don't know. What did you think before you walked in there? What was your plan? And do not say to me, I don't know, because when people do that, what that means is I don't have confidence. You're in school. That's why you're in the registrar's office to begin with, or going to an advisor. You've already gotten over that and accomplished. You've gotten over that obstacle and accomplished something. So why don't you get in there and believe in yourself? Look it up. Spend a lot of time going through the policy procedure manual. Look at the degree plan. Read all those little rules. Look at your map. Look at your time. Look at your calendar. Be honest with yourself, and then ask yourself what you want and get your plan together before you go in there. Your opinion is the first one. There's the second. But if you're passive in life, then life is going to be really hard. Because remember, everyone else is giving you information filtered through what they think and what they know. The challenge is that this you are you. And I don't care if you're 1/2 of 1% of a group that exists, or maybe you're the first of the group that ever has happened, or no one like you has done this or whatever. I don't care. You are you, and you exist, and this is your responsibility to sit down and invest. Yeah, it takes a lot of time to read all these rules and pay attention and plan out and see what they're saying and look at all the options. But if you don't do it, then nobody else is going to do it to that level of detail, because they're not going to have the same interest in investment. It's not their life. The registrar, the academic advisor, your faculty advisor, they have totally different lives because they're different people. You're the only one in your life. You're the only one that has experienced everything you've experienced. You're the only one that has the dreams, the visions, and the goals for the future. They don't know all that stuff. But you have got to take responsibility. So how do you graduate from college with your bachelor's degree and at 20? You sit down and make a plan. How do that's life. And then you're an advocate for yourself, because no one else will ever be as much of an advocate for yourself as you are. And you do that in a positive, professional way. And yes, you're going to make mistakes. And yes, you're going to realize you were wrong. And yes, you're going to be embarrassed. And who cares? Just keep going. The big picture is the goal. Graduation. That's the goal. Now, if you rush too much, the article that I read from the other person who said they finished 3 years talked about having to cut back on extracurricular, and they missed some fun times with their friends and all that kind of stuff. Yes, like there's only so many hours in a day, so whatever you prioritize, something's going to have to give. And you may not be able to have, like I said in the Favorite Flashback series, I regret that I was in some ways unable, under my own parameters that I'd set, to be able to enjoy some of those classes like I would have liked to. I don't regret that I finished school on a little bit longer than I anticipated, but on plan, because that was the plan. And in a weird way, big picture, not the details. Big picture, all the dreams I had for owning my own businesses and being the types of professional experiences that I wanted, the type of life I wanted, the type of income and opportunities, and it's either been met or exceeded. So I yes, there are drawbacks. Yes. There are challenges, yes. A lot of heavy lifting in life is going to have to be on your shoulders, but guess what? It is you. And so again, not this passive thing where, the school said this. I know what the school has a whole bunch of reasons for saying whatever they're saying. And remember, you also have individuals who may be, the best person in the office. You may have somebody who's the best person, but they're having a bad day, or they're sick, or they just got bad news about something, so they're not giving you the most appropriate advice. Don't be anything other than an actor in your own life. So you're not at the mercy of the office. You're going to make your own plan before you go to the office. Well researched, documented, and ready to go. And then they'll give you the second opinion. And if they're accurate and you learn, okay, then I'm going to have to make a change, go make your change, and then come back with a new change, with a new plan. This is your life. Again, I believe you have the power and the ability to manifest all these different things. It's going to take you some time, and it's going to take a lot of tenacity and hard work. But of course you can do it. You can do anything you want to do. I have been thrilled. And like I said, in many ways, I didn't, my real life, sometimes I look back at what I thought and hoped and dreamed, and it's so much more than that. And I think, wow, that's kind of beyond awesome. So it's your call. This is your life. So get it done. Thank you for being part of the program today. I do encourage you to go by CourtneyAnderson.com, support our sponsors, give ratings and reviews on our programs, share this program on social media if you think it might be of use for someone, and get out there and do exactly what it is that your goal is that you've set. And I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what you've gone out and done with the things we've talked about. So reach out to me and let me know what's happening. Okay? And I would also love to get any invitations to graduation. I love graduation ceremonies. It's one of my favorite things to do. And of course, as a faculty member at universities over the years, I have the opportunity to keep going to them. I just love them. And as a lifelong student, I keep having opportunities potentially to go. But I'd love to come to your graduation. So get it done. Thank you.